Hello and welcome back. This is going to be, let's say, part two. This is, I'm gonna talk about the journey of the divine masculine on the divine counterpart journey, like on the twin flame journey, twin soul journey. Because there's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of misinformation about what is actually happening. We divine feminines receive a lot of information that we do have to learn to sift through, and it is difficult a lot of times because we maybe haven't received the clarity just yet. So it's only once the mental breakthrough happens, once we are allowed by the divine to rise in frequency, that is when we get the mental clarity or the breakthrough, right? And only looking back we can see like, oh, so that has been a false information, or that wasn't true, or that was just part of a lesson, right? So I have a video that I posted previously about what the divine feminine goes through, like, let's say, an overview on the divine feminine's journey, like her point of view, if you will, like what the divine feminine goes through, kind of like what is important to think. If you feel guided to, if you wish to, you're very welcome to check that out. And if you're here because you want to know about the masculine, then welcome. I'm happy and grateful for you to be here. Okay, so what is kind of presented to us, to divine feminine, is that we are made to believe that the divine masculine is just asleep, and that for a long time, like for a bit, let's say for a big part of our journey for the feminines, right, the divine masculine is just unaware, that they're asleep, that they're just pretty much oblivious to what is happening to them, around them, like with them, right? And that is a lie. That is not true. That is just an illusion. So when the twins are meant to come together in the 3D, right? So when the moment comes that the divine masculine meets the divine feminine, so when the two meet, the masculine activates the divine feminine, and like she goes off to her journey, but the divine feminine also activates the divine masculine, because remember, everything is mirrored. That's why people kind of call us mirrored souls, right? People say that whatever we are going through, they are going through, because everything is mirrored, right? Our past experiences, both you and your twin have experienced the same things. It's just they were from the opposite side of perspective, let's say. So, and it's for the soul's journey. It's for your soul, so that your soul can learn and see kind of both perspective of the same, let's say, problem, right? Or a situation or an issue. So when the divine feminine activates the divine masculine, his journey starts too, right? So the first step is, or like the first part of the journey that a lot of people talk about, which is true, is the moment, like the honeymoon phase. So people experience elation because it feels wonderful to finally meet a human that they have consciously been looking for all their life, that just gets them, that understands them, that it feels really good to be with them. It feels really good to interact with them, right? They get your jokes, you get their jokes, and it's just, there's so many similarities, and at the same time they challenge you in a way where it's kind of like let's say, pleasant way. I don't know how to call that, because I don't necessarily have a good example to give you. But what I'm trying to say is that they kind of challenge you in a fun way where, like, let's say maybe you're discussing something, you feel very invigorated, you feel very energetic, you feel like your interaction with your twin has just gave you like an energy boost, and you're smiling and the world is more beautiful, right? Because this is what we experience. And on top of that, of course, the twins are extremely attracted to you. They don't need to be perfect by either society standards or any standards, but they are really perfect for each other, no matter how they look like, no matter their hairstyle or no hair, whether hair or no hair, right? The weight, the height, the country that they come from, how they speak, it doesn't really matter. They are just really perfect for each other. And you can ask anybody, you know this yourself. And that's just kind of what it is, right? So it's the same for both. So both the divine feminine and the divine masculine, they see that perfection in each other. Not that, well, obviously none of us are oblivious to like the shadows within the other person, or like karmic patterns, right? Or this, let's say, the negative things that we notice, because we do notice them. But that doesn't matter. It's almost like despite these things, or because of these things, we find them to be absolutely perfect. So everything is mirrored. Both twins go through the same things. So this is what happens. And so the divine masculine meets his beloved, and the feminine invites him. No, what is it? The feminine initiates him, right? So she awakens and activates the divine masculine so that he can go on his journey. And what happens is that the journey starts for the divine masculine, but the journey looks differently to how the journey looks like for the divine feminine. So the divine masculine's frequency, when he meets his divine counterpart, is lower than his divine feminine's. What I mean by that, and I hope if you're listening to this, then I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, because I do not call anybody worse or stupid or any of these things, because no, but the divine masculine's life, a lot of times, and the way kind of they act is quite low vibrational. Like, not necessarily that they're bad people, because no, none of us are actually bad people, but they may be exhibiting behaviors or belief systems, or their decisions are kind of negative. And by that I mean low vibrational, right? So for their feminine, when the feminine kind of looks at her divine masculine, she sees that, well, the divine masculine is exhibiting and acting like in a low vibrational way. And it can be anything, right? Anything and everything. It doesn't really matter. But it's important to understand it is not because the divine masculine is worse. He isn't. That is super exciting. Yeah, that is very exciting. It's very important to know. It's very important to really remember that. It's just that the divine masculine, because he is, as people say, the matrix twin, right? So his journey and the way, let's say, his embodiment on this earth is very much like 3D focused, right? So yes, the divine masculine is going to learn to balance both the outside and the inside and all of these polarities, right? Yes, but his starting point if you will, like on a frequency scale, is lower than his divine feminine. And that is by design. That is how the divine creator have designed it, if you will. That is what you have decided as a soul to do. And there's a reason for that. The divine masculine, if you have been listening to my previous videos, you probably have heard me say this before, but the divine masculine comes to this earth with much more of different karmic imprints than the divine feminine does. And then on top of that, there's also the environment that each of us kind of grow up in, right? And all the experiences and all the people around us, right? So there is a lot of, let's just say, low vibrational influence and influences that make the divine masculine kind of to be, or to create the persona that you see when you meet your divine masculine, right? So this is kind of who he embodies. He embodies a false ego. It's false ego, right? It's false persona. It's him wearing mask. He's basically just made up a character that he's playing, that he has believed that this is what he has to do in order to be safe, right? So that's what I'm going to say about this. So the divine masculine starting point is kind of lower, or like, let's say, further back than the feminines, because the divine masculine has to work through all of that karma. They are basically buried underneath a mountain of things that you, divine feminine, do not have to work through, because you already know this, because you have already learned this in your past. Well, time doesn't exist, so in your other incarnations, right? You have already gone through these things. You already have that wisdom, that maturity within you, so that you don't have to learn that, oh, it's not good that we kind of trample on people to get to our goal, or that it's not nice for us, and it's not kind of us to use other people for our gain. Just an example, right? The divine masculine, his perspective in life has been that everybody does it, and so if he doesn't learn to do that, then he's gonna lose in life, because that is the kind of examples that he has had in his life, whether it was like, let's say, the family that taught him that, or even just him being perceptive and seeing what people around him did. You know, it could be neighbors, could be just random people on the street. All his experiences, even the, like, let's say, the entertainment that he consumes, right? Whether it's, I don't know, movies, series, books, porn, right? They kind of shaped a really warped perception of how humans should act. And so he creates a persona that matches that, because he believes that this is the only way to be in this world, which is not true. But now that you have activated him, he has to work through all of that. So his journey starts at the same moment that yours. But as the divine feminine starts her journey, she starts right away working on the blockages for the two of you to reunite, for the soul to merge back into one, back into unity. And the divine masculine is working through this matrix garbage. So there's a lot about, like, you know, how you just should treat other people. It can be to do with kindness, with compassion, with I don't know, being helpful to other people. It's, I don't know, relationships, how to treat your parents, your kids, your siblings, your romantic partners, your friends. There's this, like, you know, some people even experience like, well, you need to learn that you're not supposed to steal, or you need to learn not to go and rob a bank or something, because I have heard about twins that one of the twin actually is in prison, right? Because this is what the that soul wanted to experience, right? So the divine masculine has to work through all of that matrix garbage that his feminine already is above. And it's also by design. It is to show him what is possible. It is for him to see that his feminine, she did it already, so it's possible. So it fuels him, it kind of shows him the way, right? She's the guiding light. And so because the masculine, kind of, if you think like about a racing track, right? Let's say you're gonna take a run and your starting point is closer to the like the winning line than the masculine. And when you, as the divine feminine, are looking back and looking at your divine masculine, what you see is that he's just behind you, right? I'm not even gonna go into how far behind because it's irrelevant, but what you see, so what the divine feminine sees is that he is behind her. He has to go through he has to learn the lessons that she already has the wisdom for in herself. He too, but that was the whole point, right? We were meant to come here to raise the vibration of collective. So yes, he's meant to show the way for others by releasing these things, by healing from them, by changing his life, right? And like on the curse on the journey, when the feminine kind of gets closer to the finish line, like with every step that she comes closer to the finish line, let's say, which is like the merging of the soul back into one, so our reunion with our counterpart, each time she looks back at the masculine, like no matter how much progress she does, so this is what I'm trying to say. So no matter the progress that she does, each time she looks back at where the divine masculine is, he's still behind her. He's still, like, let's say, at a lower vibration that she is. And it's always by design. It is always meant to be like this up to a certain point. It is so that we are the guiding light for our masculines. We are the lighthouse. We are the North Star, however you wish to call that. We are the ones that are showing the way for our masculine by going first in the spiritual realm and in the energetic realm. So we do the energetic work first, and because the energetic realm is not as dense, we go through these things. I don't want to say faster, but we go through these things first, and then because we did these things, because we kind of did the energetic work, the divine masculine follows in those steps, if you will, right? So it's meant to be like this. It is nothing negative in a way like, oh, the divine masculine is stupid. No. Do not even for one moment think that. The divine masculine is you, first of all, and you should never ever speak negatively about you or your beloved, no matter what they do in 3D, even though they do stupid shit, because they do, and you do too. We all do stupid shit, right? But no, it is wrong. Don't do that because you're hurting yourself. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So each time, like, the feminine looks back, right? She sees that her masculine is kind of behind her, that he's pretty much catching up. And there's a point for that for the divine feminine. Then for the divine masculine, for his perspective, there's also a point to it, because what he sees is her being above him. And I say this way because a lot of masculines kind of battle with that, believing themselves not being good enough, not worthy of her. They kind of put the feminine like really high up on some sort of really high mountain or pedestal, and they believe themselves never good enough, or that they're not capable of getting to her level. That's why this journey is designed this way. That's why it kind of looks this way, right? That's what their starting point is, let's say, at a lower density, like in a lower vibration that the feminine was. And so what happens for the divine masculine is that he works through all of that earthly crap, right? So he's working to basically be a nice person. And by that, I just mean that because they are kind beings, but they haven't been nice to people. There's a difference. I hope I don't have to explain that to you. And so when there comes a moment, right, when they have been working through these karmic things, that karmic weight, the karmic depth, right? They have been learning to be kind to themselves, to others. They have been learning to respect themselves and others, to have compassion for themselves and others, and so on and so forth. There comes a moment where they come to the frequency that the divine feminine was at when she was activated. And what happens then is that is what people have been calling the masculine awakening, because from the moment they have met their feminine up to that point, they have been clearing, let's say, the earthly clutter of like how to be a nice person, right? How to be a nice human being. Let me just put it this way. Again, I hope you understand that obviously the divine masculine, they're also nice people. They have been doing kind things to others, but it has to do with kind of how they see themselves and the world. That is what they work through. But during that time, so since they have been activated, they have been awakened then. From that first moment, they recognize their own divine feminine, and that is when they realize that they're absolutely madly in love with their feminine, that she is the best thing that has ever happened to this earth, that she's perfection in every way, no matter what wounds she carries, no matter how toxic she is, because I'm pretty sure that the divine feminine triggers the masculine just the same way the masculine triggers the feminine, right? There's a point to it. But despite all of that, right, the divine masculine sees her as perfection. And this is the misconception, because we feminines are kind of told that, I apologize, that no, in fact, the divine masculine is absolutely oblivious to the connection. He's not aware of anything. He just goes about his life the way he has before, and he has no idea about anything. That is not true. The divine masculine is jolted awake the same way you have been. He is made aware of enough on this journey to understand that his divine feminine is not like any other person they have ever met. Not necessarily because she seems or she is perfect to that masculine. It is because it feels different for him. So he feels the energetic cord, if you will, the connection. Yes, they think about us all the time the way we think about them. They are really drawn to us the way we are drawn to them. The divine masculine is very attracted to his feminine the way his feminine is attracted to him. All of these things. It's just that the divine masculine, his earthly wound, or one of them, has been them being taught to always, no matter what, whether it's like feelings of elation or something destroying them from the inside, they have been taught to ignore all of that, to deny all of their feelings, basically to pretend that their inner world and inner being, so what they feel, doesn't exist. Even what they think logically doesn't exist, and that they should always choose practicality and what is socially accepted, which is called logic, to choose always these things over their own desires and over their own intuition and over what their own soul and heart and body is telling them about certain situations. Because of that, when the divine masculine is activated by the divine feminine, he feels all the love, he feels this attraction, he feels all of these things that he has never felt before. And because he is taught, he's basically brainwashed to ignore all of that, he pushes it to the side. And this is kind of what you can, the information that is available kind of says like, yeah, you know, they distract themselves to not think about it. That is true. But what is happening is that the divine is not allowing them to kind of put it into, like, I don't know, throw it into their garage and never look at that again. It's just that there's so many other things happening around them because they're working through so much crap that these current lessons, if you will, so their 3D is collapsing, right? That is kind of what is happening. The world as they know is changing, and it forces them to kind of look at everything differently because they're learning to be kind, right? Respectful and caring and loving towards themselves and others and all of these things, right? They kind of, because how do I say it? Okay, so because, as I called it, the earthly crap, right? So the things that the divine feminine doesn't have to work through because she already has the wisdom and she embodies that wisdom within her. She's already aware that you shouldn't like trample other people to get your dream career, or you shouldn't like steal from others, or you shouldn't use other people. You shouldn't treat other people like toys. You shouldn't toy people emotionally, right? All of these things. We have already learned that at some point, but the divine masculine has to go through these things. And then because these things are much heavier in density, as in lower in frequency, that kind of takes the precedence on their day-to-day up to a certain point, but not so much so that they can just ignore their feminine and that connection and the telepathy, I hear arousal, yes, the sexual energy, the absolutely otherworldly pull towards each other, right? The masculine has a lot of sexual energy, the feminine too, of course, we all do. It's just that there's so much happening for them. And you have to understand that the divine masculine is incapable of dealing with emotions, no matter what they are. And they're incapable of kind of dealing with everything that doesn't have to do like with the hard logic or practicality. Because they were never taught by their caregivers how to deal with their emotions, how to honor their emotions, how to sit with their emotions, how to listen to their body, to their feelings, to their intuition. They are incapable of dealing with all of the things that you as the divine feminine has awoken within them. And what they kind of do what they can, right? So because they are the matrix twin, because they are like, their talents lie in kind of dealing with the 3D, so like the earthly things, they focus on that. So they use all of these changes and all of that unraveling of their 3D reality as, let's say, an excuse or a distraction from kind of taking a look at their connection with their feminine. That is why a lot of times when the divine feminine kind of tries to take a look at her divine masculine, like let's say trying to energetically check or just looking at them and seeing that they do not pay attention to the connection, right? They have rejected their feminine, right? There is the push and pull. And that happens because they kind of continue pushing all of these feelings, the emotions, the telepathic connection, all of these, let's say, otherworldly things that are happening with them and to them to decide, because they choose to focus on what they can deal with, because they try to ignore their feelings, they try to forget their feminine, they try to move on, but nothing is working. So what they do is they compensate by giving more to the things that they can, let's say, fix in the 3D, which has to do with all like their journey and what they have to go through. So you will see the divine masculine kind of, let's say, overgiving in his karmic connections, right? They maybe are womanizing, and they are fucking around, there are maybe partying, there's maybe addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever. They're maybe overworking, they have their day job, they come home and they work on something else. Maybe they take on extra hobbies and responsibilities to kind of never give themselves, or like to never allow themselves to have the time to ever look at what is happening to them on the inside. And that is what seems like stagnation for the feminine when she looks at him, especially if the feminine have come like a long way on her journey. Each time she looks back, it looks like the masculine is stagnant, right? Because things are not happening. The masculine is still in his old life. He's still repeating the pattern. He's still, I don't know, chasing money, career, women, friendships, social status, right? He's still investing into all of these things. And because they're trying to fix the 3D that is changing for them, because they themselves change. They start seeing the world differently. They start seeing and noticing that their, let's say, usual distractions, or the way they numb themselves or have numbed themselves in the past, they no longer work. So they kind of try to overcompensate, do more of it, go to more extremes, right? Let's say drugs, right? Let's say that your divine masculine is smoking weed, right? Weed is not as harmful as the many other drugs, like hard drugs, to the human body, right? I'm not gonna get into this whole like discussion about drugs, but let's say they maybe sometimes smoke weed like every now and then to relax, but it no longer does help them the way it did. It no longer numbs them, so they try smoke more, or they go for like heavier, like the hard drugs, right? That are much more that hurt our body much more, and the mind. And when that doesn't happen, it just kind of spiral, you know. They kind of push the line further and further away, and it has to do with everything: their family life, their relationships, friendships, work, career. If you have seen your masculine chasing money, yeah, they're fucking chasing that money. They're doing so much because they are noticing that their life is no longer the same. And here I want to say, it's not that they're doing this because they're like imbeciles and they're not aware that things are changing. No, I want to say this because it's really important to understand. The divine masculine is extremely intelligent. Not only that, he is also extremely cunning, which is the, let's say, the negative side of the intelligence. They know a lot, and they are extremely perceptive. because they have been neglected emotionally by their caregivers and they have been through hell up to the point they are meeting their feminines. They are extremely keen observants. They're extremely intelligent. They really see everything. So it's not that they're not aware. It's not that they are stupid or oblivious to things. Yes, they may play stupid, but that is just a mask. But they see everything. It's just that there is so many things happening that they kind of look at it in a different way, right? Only when they come to a moment where they have cleared out all of that earthly crap, like all of these like lower density patterns and belief systems within them, only then do they come into a place where they can start working on the blocks that are within them that stops them from being with their divine counterpart. I will say that for that to happen, is what is needed is for the divine masculine to experience separation, kind of like the divine feminine did. So for the divine feminine, her experience or perception of separation, which I call preparation phase instead of separation because it kind of feeds into the whole idea, but I'm going to say now separation. The divine feminine perceives and experiences the separation as for a longer period of time, where she feels basically forgotten, rejected, and isolated from her beloved under a longer period of time. And then she comes to a moment where she rises above it, right? For the divine masculine, however, that separation, basically, so the moment where he feels isolated and like truly without his feminine, maybe he feels rejected, just like the feminine did, right? Rejected, abandoned, forgotten, maybe there's even resentment. That for the divine masculine, what it takes for him is for his divine feminine to kind of disappear from his 3D reality. Only then does he experience, or is kind of, let's say, forced into the same experience that the divine feminine had during her, let's say, separation phase on her own journey. That for the divine feminine is much longer than the divine masculine. So once the divine feminine comes to her inner union, that is when she will be completely removed from the divine masculine's reality. And it could be that there is a physical separation, like no matter how it looks like in the 3D, it could be that they move to the other side of the country. They, get married, right? They do something, or maybe there's just no contact between the two of you, right? Maybe for me it was, I have worked at the same workplace as my divine masculine, and then when basically, well, it wasn't like that, but basically what I was gonna say, like when I came into my inner union, he changed jobs. Well, obviously he told me that he's gonna change job earlier than that, but then the day came and I basically a few days after he left work, as in we no longer were in the same reality, I came into my own inner union and inner peace and inner balance, and it was the most beautiful thing ever, right? And it happened this way because I had to be strong enough to stand on my own, right? First of all, and then the second of all, my divine masculine also had to come to a certain point where he has worked through everything else, and now it was time for him to work through the blocks that are within him that stand in the way, if you will, of us coming together, so our soul merging back together. And that happened for him, and this is kind of what must happen for divine masculine, is by the divine feminine removing her energy completely from her masculine. So during the, let's say, the feminine separation, so her experience of separation, we kind of are overextending our energy. We are fighting for our divine masculines, right? We stay by their side like a friend, right? Or we kind of want to be there for them. We want to support them, right? We're checking up on them. We are like really overextending our energy. And in the energy field, our energy is still there with them. And because of that, the divine masculine does not feel or doesn't experience the separation, let's say, the way or at the same time as the divine feminine does. Only when she, or only once she removes her energy. So when she comes into inner union, when she turns her attention back onto herself fully, because now she's detached, she has risen above the separation, she has peace within herself, because she knows that no matter how the 3D looks like, the union is inevitable. I cannot pronounce that. I could not pronounce it in the previous video. Sorry, English is not my first words, and I have trouble pronouncing certain sounds. I apologize for that. Well, enjoy it. Laugh at me if you wish to. Anyway, so yeah, so it's gonna happen no matter what, right? It's only in that peace and knowing that the divine feminine actually fully removes her attention and her energy from her divine masculine's energy field. And it's only then that he feels the separation. And what is happening is that the separation kind of happened earlier, right, than that. So maybe, well, the divine masculine has rejected her for whatever reason, like, right, there's a lot of earthly reason why to him they couldn't be together. And he has been doing, like, living his best life, like doing all of these things. And he obviously was very much aware that they're not together, that that he has rejected her. Maybe he believed that they couldn't be together, right? He's been lying to himself. He's been denying his own feelings because that is what he was taught to do. But there comes the moment when that people have called that, oh, this is when the divine masculine awakens. That is when he feels the separation. That is when he starts to working through all of the blocks. That is when he feels her absence. That is where it kind of hits him, just how much he hurt her by pushing her away. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of regret. The masculine's 3D life has been collapsing since the moment the two of you guys met, but it's like on such a such a big way that they can no longer pretend that, oh, well, obviously I'm getting older, so I changed, and there are certain things that do not appeal to me anymore, because they have been taught since they were little children that no matter what is happening on the inside, you have to be stoic and you have to think logically, right? So you have to think in a way that is socially acceptable. So a lot of times the changes that are happening within them, they will kind of explain them by oh, I'm getting older. Obviously, I no longer feel the need to do these things. Let's say, I don't know, go clubbing or something. And or that, oh, now that my health has been worse, so I no longer can do certain things. They will kind of explain logically the changes that are happening within them, but there comes a moment where there's so much of their old life collapsing that they cannot explain it by anything, let's say, logical or practical, right? And they have been pretty much using their journey, their healing, them rising above this really low density, all of these like really toxic patterns within themselves and belief systems, as a distraction, if you will, from their feminine. They have never forgot their feminine. They have never stopped loving her, no matter how the 3D looks like, no matter how much they have invested into other things, people, situations. They really, really still feel the love, but now there's nowhere to run. So when their feminine takes away her energy, that is when the masculine really feels alone, and that is where everything hits him, because he has nowhere to run. He has no other there's no way for him to distract himself from anything. All of the ways that he has been numbing himself with before, whatever that was, or like him overworking, like when he was living a life, not giving himself time to stop and think and stop and feel. Now there's nothing that they can no longer do, and everything, they are just pretty much immersed in all of this. And the divine masculine's awakening, I'm hearing, okay, let's call that part of the journey, right? So that their awakening happens a lot faster because it's pretty much compressed. So if the divine feminine's journey, like from the moment she has been activated to the moment she has reached her own inner union within herself, when she has like risen above the pain to a certain degree, when she feels that, oh, it's okay that there is this perceived separation in the 3D because it's bullshit. It's just an illusion. It's just so that we can learn from the things that are happening, and then these things are going to be gone, and then we will be back together. For the divine feminine, that happens over a longer period of time, much longer period of time. As for the divine masculine, sorry. So the divine masculine's, that period of time for him to go from like, okay, now I'm working through these blocks for my connection, to his own inner union is much shorter. So basically they go through much more intense awakening and purging, and all of these changes are happening extremely fast for them, but for much shorter time. And I think that when we're talking about time, like the earthly human time, I think it's going to be different. Well, yes, of course it's different for us all. I cannot give you the answer like how much shorter that is, because I think it's going to be dependent on how advanced of a soul you are, like how old of a soul you are, and what you have already gone through during your existence as you've been created. But it is much shorter and it's much more intense. And I wanted to say that I wanted to really make these videos, both this one and the one about divine feminine's perspective, because there's so much misconception when it comes to the divine masculine on this journey, and it's wrong. And it also kind of feeds into the point of view that a lot of divine feminines have had at some point, that, oh, the divine masculine is just, he doesn't feel the connection, he's not suffering, it's not affecting him in any way, he's just over there doing whatever the fuck he wants, and here I am suffering. Because that is something that we all have went through. That's kind of what we all think at a certain point. And subconsciously, even if we have kind of healed that, subconsciously there's still like a very part of us that kind of believes it. And it is because the visible changes, right, that we may be allowed to see in the 3D, they do not happen for a long time. And I will say from my personal experience, like I still cannot say that I see a lot of proof of all of the changes that even I myself have gone through, because it's just not yet happened, right? There's obviously a lot of change within me, right? But and it's the same thing with my divine masculine. There's a lot of changes that he has gone through, but the 3D looks like eerily similar to how it has been in the past, right? Like let's say at the start of this journey, and it's the same thing in my life. So the divine is kind of, everything happens for a reason. So what you see in the 3D is what you're meant to see, because it's meant to do something for you. But I think it's just very, very important to destroy that misconception of like the divine masculine being too stupid to understand or comprehend certain things. Yes, there has been a lot of things that they weren't capable of understanding or seeing or working through before, because they were never taught to how. It has nothing to do with them not wanting to. They were just incapable, and that has to do with their upbringing and their environment that they have been in up to the moment they have met their feminine. And they should not be judged for that. It should not be like a thing that makes the feminine kind of think ill of her divine masculine. We just kind of have to have that understanding, and I wanted to share that understanding. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that my message and the information that you have received is helping you. That is exactly what you needed to hear. Thank you so much for being here. There is my email in the description if you wish to work with me, or if you want to share something, there's the comment section. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.